Hello, my friends. Happy holidays. So today I'm going to show you how to create two pop-up cards. These were created for a class with the St. Charles Parish Art Lab, which is a free art class hosted by my local library. So if you live in Southeast Louisiana, consider signing up. Today we are making a gingerbread house pop-up and a Mr. Bingle pop-up, and we're starting with the gingerbread house. So the materials for the gingerbread house are brown or craft paper cardstock, double stick tape, very fine pointed detail work scissors, a bone folder, white paint pins. You may want a contrasting color of cardstock for the front of your card. You may also want to create ribbon ties, which I'll explain a little later on. So we're going to need to cut our cardstock to size, and you're going to want to cut your cardstock to 10 by 7, which will give you a 7 by 5 card when folded, which you can find envelopes for fairly easily. You can make your card whatever size you like, and I'm actually working on a gingerbread house card that is like super cute, other than this one, inspired by this one. So if you like pop-up cards, please keep an eye on the channel for that. I also have a bunch of other holiday and Christmas inspired tutorials, so make sure you check the channel homepage if you're looking for more art projects. So here is our 10 by 7 unfolded cardstock. We are going to, actually, no, never mind. I am measuring it out to 10 by 7 here, kind of demonstrating how I use a T-square to get like really straight edges. And I also cut this using a paper cutter because I cannot get a straight cut to save my life if I'm using scissors or an X-Acto blade. So I have a couple of paper cutters, and that makes it so much easier. There to the left is the thumbnail sketch for what I want my pop-up card to look like. And I wrote the numbers down for you. So here now is our 10 by 7 cut cardstock. We're going to use our bone folder, or you can use the handle of a butter knife if you work very carefully. Basically, all this does is make sure that our creases are extra crispy. So you can basically use any non-marking kind of plasticky thingy to do this, but I bought a bone folder years ago for folding mini comics and zines, and I used the heck out of it. So if you like to make a lot of paper crafts, or if you like to make comics and zines, I recommend it. So this is a demonstration of the pop-up mechanism. We're making a little kind of indented table that we are going to tape our pop-up gingerbread house to. So we're going to cut a slit. I'm cutting mine in the center of the card. One thing I want you guys to notice is that the deeper you cut your slit, the closer the house will be to the front of the card. The shallower you cut your slit, the closer to the back of the card it will be. You can use this to your advantage to create a sense of depth. But I'm starting with a single center cut, and now I'm going to cut my gingerbread house out of my other piece of cardstock. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to use a scrap Post-it note to kind of help me create a mock-up for my gingerbread house. So I got these at Daiso. I really like these. These are really handy. I use them a lot. They're great for mock-ups as well as for just taking notes. So one of the things I'm demonstrating, or I'm testing to see, is I don't want my pop-up mechanism to stick up out of my card. So I'm trying to figure out how short the house needs to be for it to fit into the card completely when the card is folded. You may not care if your pop-up mechanism sticks out. That might be a feature that you utilize to like give a little sneak peek or a hint. But for this card, I wanted the house to be hidden. So that's why I adjusted the size of the house. Now I'm going to kind of transfer my little mock-up to a piece of craft paper cardstock, tracing it out, and then I'm going to kind of use a ruler to help me get those straight lines and to kind of extend it. If you are interested in teaching this to your class, if you're a teacher and you want to teach this, I shared the full presentation over on my Patreon, and I also have like little video segments that help demonstrate it. So if you join me at patreon.com/natosoup, and you can join for just $2 a month, you will get access to the materials that I create for all of my in-person classes when I actually create material. So like I said, this one has a presentation, and it also has printables, but I actually set the printables to free. So I know it's a little bit hard to see, but I sketched in my house shape using a non-photo blue pencil because it would show up a little bit better on the brown cardstock. And now I'm carefully cutting out the base shape. You can do whatever kind of gingerbread house you want, but if you're looking for inspiration, I recommend you look up gingerbread houses. Make sure you include no AI or type in like the years 2010 to 2020, and that should give you some really nice photos of real gingerbread houses instead of generative AI gingerbread houses, which may not be particularly helpful for you. So that's my little tip if you're looking for, real reference instead of computer generated garbage. So we have our base house here. I kind of curled over the edges to make it look like icing. And here is the measurements. It's a little bit over 3 inches wide and it's like 2.5 inches tall. So I'm going to do like a quick mock-up, and then I figured I wanted to do some trees. Now I am marking where I want the tree slits to be, and I'm kind of just figuring this out as I go along. I always create demos for my classes before I teach them. That's how I promote the class, and that is also how I, actually create the materials I need to teach the class. So there's a lot of trial and error here, but I love showing that because I love seeing other people's art process and I love showing art process. So I cut 2 shallow slits, try saying that 3 times fast, for trees. And now I'm going to use some green cardstock. So remember what I said about contrasting cardstock? It's very handy to have that, or construction paper handy. I have my house over to the side and I'm sketching in some trees. Now you have a few options for how you might want to sketch trees. I'm going with fir trees and I'm keeping the shapes very simple. They are basically based on triangles or cones, if you will. One of them is like 2 stacked cones and one of them is just 1 cone. And I end up making like 4 trees total and varying the sizes. You can do as many trees as you want. If you cut one of those deeper slits, you can even do a tree that's in front of the house, really working on that depth. And it definitely doesn't have to be trees. I just thought that would be really cute with our little gingerbread house to, kind of create a little bit of a landscape. So I'm using my fussy cut scissors to clean up my cute little trees. And if you have a Cricut, that might be a great way to kind of make this easier, to batch process this for a class that you're teaching. You could cut out 20 of these little houses all in one go. Although, while it speeds things up, it might limit the creativity a little bit, or it might encourage your students to get even more creative as they find ways to customize a very basic blank template into something that feels more personal. I decided to cut the bases off the trees, and so I'm gonna experiment with how they look against the house and how they look on the card. And this is where I decide, I kind of want more trees in the background. So I'm just kind of placing them and thinking about it. And then I'm like, okay, it's time to cut some more slits here. So I'm going to cut the slits closer to the house because I want this to feel like a fuller card. I felt like the house by itself was kind of empty, and it was also brown on brown, which is not very visually stimulating. You could do a different color for your background. A white or even a very light blue would be lovely for this, and it would really make that little gingerbread house pop. If you decide to do this project, please consider tagging me at NattoSoup, NattoSoup, because I would love to see what you guys do. So again, a little bit of trial and error, pulling the green cardstock back out, pulling the house back out, and referencing both my trees and the houses, I'm adding in some larger trees this time, so we get a little bit more variation. But I'm using the same base for the trees, so they're basically like triangular fir trees. You can do whatever kind of trees strike your fancy in whatever kind of colors you find inspiring. You might decide you want to do lollipop trees, or you might want to do candy cane trees or gingerbread trees. It's really up to you. I've already taught this class in person and I really enjoyed teaching it. We focused mainly on the gingerbread house card, and they took the Mr. Bingle card home as a take home, and I included a QR code in my presentation so that they'd be able to access it while at home. These work well in person when you're demonstrating the basic techniques and explaining what works well, and then they can do the rest at home if they want to. I actually started with the Mr. Bingle card, and there's a lot more trial and error there as I'm figuring things out. So the gingerbread house card benefits from my mistakes with the Mr. Bingle card. But like I said, I love showing you guys the process and how I figure things out, because I think that's just very integral to the artistic process and it's not really shown enough. So you can use white gel pens, you could use glitter gel pens, you can use white acrylic markers, but you want opaque. You want something that is going to stand out on the paper. So I went scrounging and I found some Arteza acrylic markers from like past advent calendars, and I also ordered some Artistro white acrylic pens for the class. So I bought like a class set for the class. So that's what I'm going to use to decorate my trees. But whatever you have at home will probably work. You can even use paper to decorate your trees in your house if you want. So the white paint pen mimics the icing on a gingerbread house. And this is what I think makes this project so cute. This idea is not mine. I was seeing it on Instagram where people were using white gel pens to make gingerbread men and to make gingerbread houses, and they made ornaments with them, or they made other kind of decorative elements. You can also use this on a craft paper bag. One of the librarians who sometimes comes to my classes showed me a picture of a gingerbread house craft paper bag that she made a few years ago, and it was super cute. So this is a very easy idea that has a whole lot of flexibility. This could make for cute gift bags, or for cute gift tags, or for ornaments, or just decorations to put on your windows. So I am referencing gingerbread houses while I'm working on this, just for some ideas for how to apply the icing and how to decorate the house. And since my house here, but remember, I'm going to be doing another gingerbread card house, so keep an eye out for that. This house is so tiny, there isn't a lot of room for details. That's why I'm doing another one, is I wanted room for those super cute details, because the white icing done in acrylic is both easy to do and turns out super cute. One of my students did tiny little white gingerbread people on their house, and then they put little red bow ties on them, and it was adorable. So you don't have to feel like you have to limit this to just one color if you don't want to. When I'm making demos for my classes, I do try to, in general, keep it simple, because it's really just meant to serve as a basis for inspiration. And a lot of my students will start with the techniques that I demonstrate and then add their own. So keeping it simple and using some very basic techniques makes it more approachable. These cute little frosting dots, they're just so adorable and they're so easy to do. You really don't have to be good at drawing to make some adorable gingerbread house cards. You just have to be patient and enjoy decorating things. So look how cute that house is. I look forward to doing my bigger card because I can't wait to slather on the icing details. So for the little trees, I decided to use my acrylic pens. I don't particularly love the Arteza pens. I'm not recommending them or anything. It's just something that I already had, and they were small enough to get in there and do little details. I actually went through my art supply stash to see what stuff I already had for this project. So that's what I recommend you do. See what you have and see what sparks inspiration. Something else that would be super cute is like ephemera, like clippings from magazines or newspapers or your junk journal. Something else that'd be really cute is like chiogami or wrapping paper for this. There's lots of ways that you can do this with stuff you already have or trash, and recycle it into something that is absolutely adorable. For example, if you don't have brown cardstock and you want to work with something heavier, you could actually use the interior of cereal boxes for your brown craft paper or cardstock and just glue like a prettier paper on the other side to cover up the Cheerios or whatever. So it does not have to be brown cardstock. You do not have to go out and spend money. You probably have a lot of these materials or something that will work well for this at home. That said, I will have listed out the materials that I used in case you want a materials list, in case you plan on teaching this, or in case you want a materials list so you can figure out what you need ahead of time so you can sub stuff out as you wish. Now that we have our house and our trees all decked out, feeling festive for this winter season, I wanted to kind of figure out the order that I want to place the trees and where I want to place the house, because once I start taping things down, there's no moving it really. I also decided I wanted to do a cute little icing pebble path leading from the house to like the front of the card, partially to take up space. This could also be a great place for you to write whatever message you want to write when you're sending out this card. But since I'm not sending this and it was a demo, I wanted to decorate it to help fill up the space. There are other pop-up elements that you could add to help fill this up as well, but I really wanted to focus on just demonstrating 2 pop-up techniques for this class. So I'm using double stick tape. I recommend Scotch double stick tape for this. I've used other brands. I don't like them as much, especially when I do like my paper craft miss. I've tried all kinds of tapes and tape runners and glue dots and all kinds of things for that. And this is what I find in general works the best. I would recommend tape over glue, even paper crafting glue, because as you will see with Mr. Bingle, it can cause some warping even if you try to clamp it down and secure it while it's drying. So double stick tape is what I recommend for this. It is quick, it is easy, it is less mess. You can do it with the littles and it genuinely does work better. So I applied a strip of double stick tape to the viewer facing side of our little tables. And I'm just going to apply my trees first, so that way I'm not trying to work around the house. And I'm pressing them firmly into the tape using like one of my fingers as well as my thumb, just for support. And I'm also trimming off any excess tape just so that it doesn't stick to the card and cause further problems. And then we place our house, lining it up with the path. It is already looking very cute. You can remove your double stick tape. It can damage your paper. It will ruin the tape. So I just removed it because I wanted to spread my trees out a little bit further so they weren't as covered up by the house, and to help it look like a fuller card. So yeah, you can see me doing that. I told you there's a lot of trial and error and experimentation, and I'm really glad that I can share that part of the process with you guys. Want to normalize that as much as possible. And then I decided to draw some really ugly snowflakes. Not that this basic form is ugly, it's just that mine turned out ugly. I should have done that earlier in the process before I put in the house, because it's kind of challenging working around the house. And I'm just filling in the sky using snowflakes. Something else that might be cute is you might want to paint like a night sky on the background using acrylic paint or gouache, although that may make your paper ripple. You could also use gel pens to do your snowflakes, or you could do stars. That would be really cute. If you're feeling particularly energetic, you could do a silhouette of Santa and his reindeer, or his alligators if you are Cajun or Creole, flying across the night sky, just kind of whatever strikes your fancy. So I'm using a contrasting color of cardstock and our friend, the double stick tape. You want to make sure you get it as flat as possible because those ripples will be apparent. It is okay if you pull it up because this card is designed to go edge to edge. So I am being very generous with my application of double stick tape because I want to make sure that my card sticks. So I am applying it along the edges, but also about midway into the card, you don't want to apply the double stick tape past where the slits go, because that can cause sticking and that can prevent your card from operating the way it's supposed to. But you do want some tape in the middle so that the card doesn't like come loose with the folding mechanism, if that makes sense. And you guys might think, oh, glue would be better for this. I line it up with the center and then I press the card down firmly. Now, I should have told you this, but if you want to do a ribbon closure like I do, apply your cut ribbons, and I'm just using inexpensive craft ribbon here, about 5-inch lengths. Apply them before you put in the folding element of your card. So apply them to the double stick tape and then put in your folding card. It's just easier than trying to pull it apart and putting them in and then adding in more tape because you kind of ruined your tape like I'm doing. But you see, trial and error. We make mistakes. We learn from the process. We refine as we go. you know, it was easier for me to teach this because I'd made this card. And I have no problem showing you guys some of the mistakes that I make if they don't take up too much time, because that is part of the artistic process and part of the learning process. Okay, now we have our ribbon ties to tie it shut. So that means it's time to decorate the front of the card. I'm holding it shut with a Chinese watercolor weight, and I am using a gold acrylic marker to just write. I think I wrote Happy Holidays on it. I have terrible hand lettering. I have terrible calligraphy. I am not one of the girlies who can do the really cute hand lettering and add like a sweet or funny or sassy or snarky sentiment to my cards. My handwriting is ugly. So you could do better than me, I'm sure. But regardless of if your hand lettering looks good or not, this is a card that you handmade for somebody. That is super cool. It is one of a kind. You'll put your own fingerprints, probably some of your skin cells into it. It is something unique from you that you put time into. So even if some parts of it are not as good as others, it's still meaningful, and I am sure it will be appreciated. So you can decorate the card however you like, whatever sparks joy for you. You may decide to do a black, or not a black, well, you could do a black and do like a starry sky. That would look really pretty. I was gonna say a dark blue background, and you know, you can, sorry, my brain completely copped out on me, but like you could do like dark blue with a menorah on it, and that would be really pretty too. So you can definitely personalize it, gel pens, acrylic markers, anything kind of opaque that stands out on these darker papers. So next we are going to do the Mr. Bingle, inspired by the pop-up book. I actually bought several books on creating pop-up elements to help me prepare for this class and come up with some ideas. And since I had to teach this, I wanted to pick a couple that were fairly simple. So with the Mr. Bingle, we're going to do a pop-up element where it's like popping up from the interior of the card itself. So I made a couple of mock-ups for me to kind of figure out how this worked and how I wanted to handle it. And I found that really, for me, and for this project, 2 points of attachment, so in this instance, both hands and both feet, so 2 points on each side, is going to make a more secure pop-up that's less likely to wear out over time. But for this one, I actually did several demos and several iterations to help me figure out how this mechanism worked and how to get it to work for this card, and what size I needed to make Mr. Bingle in comparison to the background, so he didn't stand out taller than the card, because that was important to me. I wanted these to be able to fit theoretically in an envelope. So it's inspired by this book. I'll have the link in the description below. Originally, I thought I was going to use Canson XL. We'll get to that later. This is a demonstration of one of my demos to show how it's cut from one piece of paper, and the background folds one way and the character folds inward. And I decided, so symmetry for this is really important. So I decided to do my sketch in Procreate using the symmetry tool. That way I can make sure that both sides are even, because you're gonna fold it and then cut it out. I know this is hard to see, but this is what the finished little dude looks like. If you're not familiar with Mr. Bingle, he was the holiday mascot for Maison Blanche. He started life as a puppet, and like kids in Louisiana in the 40s and 50s would go to see these puppet shows during the holiday season and really love them. I was born in '86. I did not get to enjoy Mr. Bingle, but he has a lot of nostalgia down here. So I figured since I am teaching this class in Louisiana, I would do a people pleaser. So I had to do a couple of different iterations to kind of like figure out the card, figure out the sizing, figure out the material. Something that I found was that his cone hat kept sticking out too far, so I had to make him a lot smaller. And I would kind of take notes as I went. And I'm showing this because I really want to show you guys the planning and the iteration process. That art does not just pop out fully formed and perfect every time. And I'm doing these iterations on cardstock and Bristol, so heavier papers, to kind of emulate the final paper that I'm going to use. Originally, I thought it would be Canson XL, but that ended up being too heavy for it to fold well. So I ended up going with Canson Graduate, which is a lighter weight watercolor paper. I don't super like graduate, but for cards like this, it works out okay because, like I said, XL is just a little too thick, a little too heavy for it to fold well and pop out the way I wanted it. So that's why I went with graduate. So you guys might remember I did the background for this card and Mr. Bingle digitally in Procreate. So I sent that to myself as a PSD and I printed that using my Epson printer onto the watercolor paper using my blue line technique. So basically I'm counting on the dyes being water soluble while they're still sort of wet. So if I pencil and ink them and then stretch my watercolor paper with water, that will remove some of those blue lines. The blue lines are not so distracting here because we're painting a snowman, so they're gonna basically disappear. But I went ahead and inked him and penciled in the background, and then I am securing it with blue painter's tape, and I'm gonna wash it out to remove those blue lines and just go ahead and paint on top of it. Now, it doesn't matter really how you decide to color this. I have a pre-colored version that you can just print out and cut out over on Patreon, as well as a line art version. I recommend that you don't print it out on anything lighter than cardstock. I'm doing watercolor because I like watercolor and I tend to work very quickly in watercolor, and watercolor is very economical, so that's why I chose this. If you opt to do watercolor, I really recommend you secure the paper very well because you want it to dry as tight and flat and ripple free as possible. And even though I took these precautions and even used watercolor weights to help weigh the paper down as it dried, it did still warp on me, and that did cause some problems later on when cutting out Mr. Bingle. So I'm just, I have a lot of watercolor tutorials here on the channel. So I'm doing like a wet into wet wash, and then I'm dabbing in some dry over wet to get like these streaky cloud effects. And I sprinkled in some salt to give it like kind of snowflakes. And I'm working with ultramarine blue because it's granulating and it gives this really pretty snow effect. I have loads of tutorials where I talk about watercolor. So if you are looking for a watercolor tutorial, I will try to remember to link them for you guys down in the description below, but you can also check my main page over on YouTube because, like I said earlier, I have a bunch of holiday tutorials, many of which are watercolor. I don't want to get too in-depth walking you guys through the painting process just because this is something I have done a million times, and by that I mean making tutorials about watercolor, and because honestly, the watercolor part of this is not the most important part. It's the card making part. And I honestly wouldn't recommend you use watercolor for this. I would recommend you use alcohol markers, or you use color pencils, or just print out the color version that I linked on Patreon. Because again, it can kind of warp, it can kind of shift. The watercolor paper is still a little bit heavier than cardstock, so it's still a bit more difficult to deal with than cardstock. And if you just want to like relax and enjoy yourself and make a cute pop-up holiday card, the watercolor part of this is probably going to make it less fun and more complicated than it needs to be. And far be it for me to talk you guys out of watercolor because I adore watercolor, but just thinking pragmatically, I would recommend a drier, easier medium that isn't going to cause warping. I'd also recommend like be kind to yourself. And for this one, if you're not doing the pre-colored printout, give it a couple of days. Like don't try to get it done all in one day necessarily, because you're doing a lot of work here with coloring an image. Now, what could be really fun with this one is to have, if you're working with younger kiddos, have them color the image and then you cut it out and then you work on the pop-up aspect of it together. If you're a teacher doing this for a class and you have access to a Cricut, using the Cricut to do the cuts is going to be just so much easier on your hands, and will probably go faster. And it definitely will be easier than having a class of 24 kiddos try to cut this out, I think. But you know your class and you know your resources better than I do. Maybe you want to practice those cutting skills. This will definitely practice those cutting skills. So you guys might notice that in general, I don't really use X-Acto blades if I can get away with it. I am much more comfortable with scissors, and I feel like I can do a better job with scissors. It doesn't mean you can't use an X-Acto blade. It just means I didn't really want to use an X-Acto blade. Let your Mr. Bingle, if you did watercolor, dry fully, totally, and completely before you remove it from the stretcher board. This is where I scanned mine so that I could share it with you guys, and remove the excess so that it is, this one is actually sized to be smaller than 5x7, and it's going to have a red cardstock contrast. And these are the other materials that I used. Tombo's liquid glue. I pulled out some tape runners. I didn't use those. I pulled out these chrome markers. I tried to use these chrome markers and they are horrible. So I ended up using the acrylic metallic markers that you guys see here. And I actually reviewed those and I really like them. Spoiler, I hope you guys will check out the full review when it's available, when it's finished. And I had so much frustration cutting the Mr. Bingle demos out of cardstock and out of Bristol with my garbage scissors that it compelled me to buy some, these are terrible, not these, but some other scissors better suited for fussy cutting. So some of the other things you might want for this is, so I got a red and green 2-pack of cardstock. Just worked out really well for this. I also am introducing some more of that kraft ribbon. So if you bought some kraft ribbon, it's a great time to pull it out. I bought some jingle bells because jingle, jangle, jingle. Here comes Mr. Bingle. I figured people would like the silly little jingly bells. It was a fun element. If you're sending this in the mail, you do not have to use the jingle bells. So I am measuring my cardstock to cut it down to 10x7, the magic number, because that gives us a 5x7 card when folded. And again, I'm going to use my handy paper cutter, but I want to make sure I have these guidelines first, because while my paper cutter is good at many things, for some reason 5x7 is a size that the measuring board on it, it's just really hard to figure out what 5x7 would be on that. So, you know, doing it this way. And I am using a T-square for this, one that is clear, makes it easier for me to see, and in imperial, not metric, because I'm doing 10x7. So here is our cut card stock. And I think, oh yeah, I'm finding the middle point for this, so I'm measuring 5. You can literally just fold it halfway end to end and then slice it like that, but I decided that I did not need to do that. I decided to do it the slightly more involved way. Both still work, gives me a line to point to. All right, so we are going to fold our Mr. Bingle before we cut our Mr. Bingle, and we're folding him both ways, and that way we have this crease that will work for popping him out. We're going to use our bone folder to get that nice, sharp, crispy fold, and we're going to do that on, I thought we were going to do it on both sides, but we did not. Now here comes the annoying, painful part. we're going to cut Mr. Bingle. Now, if you look at this design for the printout, you will see that I actually extended his hands and feet. And that's to give us the fold point to allow him to pop out so that it's not folding on his hands and feet, it's folding after his hands and feet. So we are going to cut out everything except for those attachment points. And that will make more sense once you see what I've done. These scissors are terrible. They were so painful when cutting this. So good fussy cutting scissors are a must, especially if you're working with a heavier paper. Even this very thin watercolor paper was heavy enough to be kind of painful for this. So that's another reason why I'm recommending that you go with color pencils or markers so that you can use a lighter cardstock for this, because boy, you will wreck your hands. Another problem is that, as I mentioned earlier, my paper warped. So here's the X-Acto blade. I'm pulling it out because I needed to kind of get a midsection cut, like a middle of the paper cut. So I needed to make that hole, and I didn't want to destroy my paper doing it. So my paper warped while I was painting it, and one side is like slightly shifted from the other. So folding it in half like this results in me cutting one side nice and the other side doesn't work out so well, as you guys will see in a minute. I'm sorry, I had to bring it up to my face so I could see it. So since I did such a messy, gross cutting job, a Cricut would have done better on this one. I'd need to re-ink it and kind of hide my sins a little bit. So I am inserting, it's basically like, it's to keep me from messing up the background. So I put a scrap sheet of paper in between Mr. Bingle and the background, and I'm just kind of re-inking his outline to kind of clean it up. This is obviously optional. You don't have to do this if you didn't mess it up or if you don't feel like it. I'm demonstrating this because, again, I really want to be very transparent about the art process, and that the art process doesn't come out perfect the first time. There's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of making mistakes and learning how to fix mistakes and learning how to make the best of things and learning how to clean up and learning how not to just get discouraged in the middle of something and give up on yourself, right? Art is a process, it's a journey, and it's a lot of fun figuring out how to fix mistakes. And sometimes you end up with something you like way better because you had to fix those mistakes. So I'm showing this because it's just a natural part of the art and illustration process. Moving it up to past the second cut. And I hope you guys can actually see, and you'll see it a little bit better, where I left it uncut. So if you're working along with this, please be patient. And if you're not sure where to leave it uncut, just watch and see how it folds. Okay, so now we're going to push the card back. Oh, nope, I found another area to fix. When it comes time to fold, we're going, oh, okay, I'm fixing the background now. I'm using some white gouache to kind of hide those black lines that, you know, got kind of messed up. Could use a white gel pen for this. You could just leave it as is. It's all optional. This is something that we're doing for enjoyment and for fun. This is not for a grade, at least not with me. If you're an art teacher teaching this, if it's up for a grade, it's up to you. But, you know, hopefully this can be inspiring to help show your students, hi guys, how to fix mistakes. And to not get discouraged. Like, even professional artists who've been doing it for 20 years make mistakes. It's just learning how to live with the mistakes, hide the mistakes, or fix the mistakes. So I'm going to need to let that gouache dry fully before we move forward, just because I don't want white gouache getting everywhere. And you can see I did a pretty decent patch-up job with it. You wouldn't have known unless you were looking for it. It doesn't have to be perfect because the human eye in general is not just looking for mistakes, or rather you have to train yourself to do that. So now we're going to push the card part back and push Mr. Bingle forward, and we're going to try to work it so that you see the little feety and the little handsies have like an extra tab on them. We're going to try to work it so that that is where the tab's at, that is where the fold is, and not on his hands and feet. And this takes some finessing, it takes some zhuzhing, it takes some patience. And we're gonna crease those folds. And you can see we have the pop-up element of Mr. Bingle already. He is already popping out of the background. So now we need to make the cover for our card, because I didn't think it would look good if we just had like Mr. Bingle, like, you know, popping out of the background and that's it. That's the card. So we're going to cover that up. You do not have to if you do not want to. I am using the red cardstock. I have folded it in half using my bone folder to get the nice crispy fold. And I set my card aside. I'm going to make some holly leaves. So I cut a strip of paper. I'm going to fold it in half. I didn't measure it. I don't care. If you have a scrap of green, that'll work too. I'm folding it in half because this is going to give us three-dimensional sort of kind of holly leaves. And I'm putting a crease down the middle. It also allows me to just do one cut per leaf, or you'll see what I mean in a minute. Not literally one cut, but we could go edge to edge if we want, and we're kind of cutting what looks like a 3 shape or an M shape, and then you unfold it and you have your holly leaf. I want 3 holly leaves, so I'm going to cut 2 more leaves in various sizes. They do not have to be the same size. We're going wabi-sabi. All right, so here is our folded card. I'm going to pull out my acrylic markers. I like these okay. Like I said, I think I used the brush in for this. This is a fairly inexpensive set too, so you have a good variety of colors for not a whole lot of money. I'm going to go with the gold. You can use, again, whatever colors. Use whatever you have. Hopefully you've already got stuff at home for this. I was providing materials for a class, so there were some things I needed to buy extra for. And my cursive is not good. I do not have good brush lettering. That is okay. We can fix these things. We can clean these up. But I wrote in jingle, jangle, jingle. Now, what you guys did not see is I actually penciled that in first using blue lead. And the really terrible chrome markers that I started with wouldn't write over the pencil. So I had to just completely chuck that. And I decided not to include that blooper, not because I'm ashamed of it, but because it took up extra time. And doing 2 cards, even time-lapsed, is still a long video. And I know some of y'all love the long videos, and some of y'all think I am super boring. Yes, I read the comments. Hi, guys. So I'm just thickening up I think I'm like thickening up the edges of the letters, if that makes sense, to make it look a little bit more fancy, a little bit more like brush calligraphy. So now that we have our oh so pretty brush calligraphy, it's time to attach our holly leaves and to make our bow with our bells, and to attach our Mr. Bingle card to our cardstock. I'm going to start by probably decorating the front of the card, although realistically I would probably glue the Mr. Bingle or tape the Mr. Bingle in first. So I am starting by making a little bow with my inexpensive kraft ribbon. Well, actually I made a knot first. That gives me a basis to make the bow on. Now I made my little bow. I adjust it to make it real cute, and I'm going to tie my bells to the ends. And I'm just going to knot it. You could secure it with a little dot of super glue if you care that much. I think it'll be fine. I mean, I don't have young kiddos, so they're not going to be like playing with this to death. If you have young kiddos, I would recommend maybe not even doing the bells or the ribbon at all, because those could be a choking hazard. It's kind of up to you and your discretion. You know your kids. So I'm figuring out where I want to put my holly. So I'm doing kind of a temporary placement, and I'm using Tombo's liquid glue for this. But first I'm going to glue my Mr. Bingle in. Again, I would use tape if I could do this again, because as careful as I was, and the fact that I basically clamped it down to make sure that it didn't warp, it worked. And I even tried to make sure I had even coverage without oversaturation, you know, all the stuff you're supposed to do. There's like a silicone glue brush on the big end, so I used that to make sure I got an even coverage. It still warped. I should have used double stick tape. Learn from my mistakes. That's why I'm sharing my mistakes, for you to learn from them. I thought because this is kind of like a paper crafting glue, it would not cause warping. I thought it might have a quick dry solvent in it. It does not. However, you get to see how I attempted to fix this situation. situation by clamping it between two sturdy pieces of chipboard from the backs of watercolor pads and using clips on all four sides to apply even pressure. I could have also put it under a stack of books. It may have still warped. I let this dry for 24 hours, came back, 12, I'm sorry, lied to you, 12 hours later, removed the clamps, and it had worked. Is it really bad? No, but it's just bad enough that it kind of annoyed me. I could have used tape and avoided that, so that's why I'm kind of harping on that. So now it is it is the season to attach our holly. I'm going to use watercolor weights to hold my card shut. I'm going to do a generous glue dot, and I'm going to start placing my holly, and you guys are going to see that I actually am like, and I pick up the holly and I put a line of glue down the folded spine just to better secure it. For the front of the card, the glue worked fine, not a problem at all. It was just the interior where it caused, a little bit of an issue. Press those down firmly into the glue, and then press your cute little bow into the glue. And I used a watercolor weight to like really hold it into the glue, and then I walked away for like a couple of hours to let it dry so I wouldn't try fussing with it too much. Nice thing about glue though is like if it's still wet, you can kind of reposition it, and this glue doesn't get like overly tacky. It doesn't collect all the cat hair in my house. All right, so I gave it 5 hours. That's so helpful that I did that, huh? All right, now we have our very cute jingle, jangle, jingle. Here comes Mr. Bingle card. For all my fellow Louisianians out there, if you are from Louisiana, give me a shout out in the comments. I want to know who you guys are. And here are our two adorable cards, our Gingerbread house card and our Mr. Bingle card. I hope you guys feel inspired. I hope you try some pop-up techniques yourself. They're very simple, and I'd love to see what you come up with. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and a happy holiday season, and I would like to thank my amazing patrons on Patreon. It is their support and the support of my public library that allows me to bring tutorials and classes like this to you guys. Thank you guys so much.